Welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. Well, it's no secret that businesses are influencing and shaping our culture now more than ever before. But there's a lot that can be done about it to push back, to put our money where our heart is, to shape the culture through the way we use our money. And today, you've tuned in for part 2 of a 2-part series with a great guest, RYLEE MEEK. We're going to talk today about the kingdom economy and how you can spend your money with businesses that share your values and promote our culture. Here we go. World, and I know that you talk about God's design, right? And you've written a couple of books on this. You've written, I think, a 2-book series on this called The Kingdom Entrepreneur. Yeah. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this show. We've got a lot of family business owners. We've got a lot of small, medium, and large business owners who really will benefit from this. Talk a little bit about the 7-day blueprint. I know you go back to the creation of the world, and I think that's a great place to start for this. How did you apply that and those principles to this idea of being an entrepreneur and building that 7-day blueprint?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, as entrepreneurs, I think we and those listening, that we just think different. It's an incredible thing. Like if you're, when you see a problem, we're not focused on the problem. We're focused on the solution of like, how do we make this better? Can this be smoother? Can this go better? Right. And if that's your thought process, maybe you wouldn't even consider yourself an entrepreneur right now. Maybe you're working a job, but if that's how you think, you're an entrepreneur, right? I just want to be clear. There's an employee mindset, which is do what I'm told and don't do anything else. And then there's the entrepreneur mindset, which is, okay, God is creator, and he actually invited us to co-create with him. That's scripture in Genesis 2. He actually invites Adam to come alongside and name the animals. And when the revelation to me on that, I was like, oh my gosh, like God, the 7-day blueprint, which I'll get to, but through that blueprint, then next he comes to Adam and he's like, hey, let's name these animals. What would you like to name them? The creator of the universe asked man to co-create with him. It's crazy, man. That's just so incredible. Yeah. But also, I think just an example of the intimacy that our creator wants with us. And if we understand that if we invite him into this process of creating, and this could be the culture within your home. Again, this isn't just about business. This 7-day blueprint is how to create anything. If you want a great relationship, follow this blueprint. If you want an incredible business, follow this blueprint, right? This goes into everything into our life. If you just want to lose weight, follow this blueprint. And it's why wouldn't we follow the original blueprint of the creator of the universe? And it's so simple. It's all in Genesis chapter 1. And it literally lays out how God created everything that we see today. And then he invited us to continue to co-create, right? And God created everything for 6 days, and then he rested on that 7th day. So I'll go through these real quick, Jimmy, because I could talk on this for days, man. But day 1,
let's sit in on 3. I want you to focus in on 3, and it's amazing. I read them, and I thought to myself, this is a blueprint for life change, for a fulfilling life. It's not just for business. So that's why this applies so much. But day 1 is what? Creating a vision, right? It's having that picture of what you want. Yeah.
Yes. Day 1 is vision.
Talk about that.
It's crazy because God, it says in the beginning, right? That's how everything starts in the beginning. And then it says that first off, God spoke everything into existence, which is another just powerful rabbit trail that we could go down. But that's where your words, the power of your words are so important. But then the first thing it says, God said, let there be light. And when I first read this, I'm sure everybody else, you can use, if you're in your mind's eye right now, just think, what is light? Right? I just think of, okay, well, it's probably the sun, right? It's how we see things. I got an LED light shining on me right now. But as we continue to read, the sun wasn't actually created until day 4. So then it's like, well, wait a minute, what actually is light? Because scripture in the New Testament also says that God is light. That alone, then I was like, what the dirt? How do I even read this? And if we look at actually science, and this is how I just love so much how science backs up scripture. It's just incredible because when God said, let there be light, what he was essentially doing was casting his energy. Let there be light. And science today actually still proves that the universe is expanding at the speed of light. Freaking incredible, Jimmy.
That's
amazing. I just get goosebumps right there. But what was God actually doing? He was casting vision, right? He first off, it was dark. There was darkness everywhere, right? Yeah. It says the spirit of the waters hovered over the deep. It's like, how do we even understand this? God had a clear vision of creating us. And he said, let there be light. It was casting his energy into an existence. And so whether you're in business, whether you're in a relationship, it is so important to start out with a clear vision of like, what is it that you want to do and accomplish? What is the vision? Now, vision is not goals. Okay. Goals are stepping stones that are a means to an end that will help to fulfill the vision. But what is the vision of your life? We could spend days and days on this, but that's at the core of what day one actually is. And then what's incredible is day two, it simply says that God separated the heavens from the earth, or he created what's called the firmament, right? And I'm like, what is that? It's like he actually created the atmosphere, right? He had to actually create an environment where there could be oxygen for us to breathe eventually. There wasn't yet, but this is the atmosphere that we are now going to live in. And this is how in business I relate this to what's the culture in your company, right? Like what is the environment that you've created? How about this in your home life, Jimmy? This is a big one. If you want a solid marriage, like my vision is to have a rock star, beautiful wife. I come home, she kisses me at the door. My kids are running to me to give me a hug. That's a great vision, but you have to create the environment, the culture for that to actually take place. Because we've coached a lot of men that it's like, hey, what's the culture like when you get home from work and they hear the garage door open? Are kids running to their room, or are they coming out to see daddy? Right? What is that? And that can be a very hard thing to actually swallow, but that starts with you. And what is the culture that you've created in your home life or in your business life? Do your employees do they love to show up to work? Are they on point? They excited to be there? Or is this just like punching a clock because they got to pay the bills? Right. And if that isn't clear, we got to get everybody clear on the vision. Right. Day three then is structure. And this is so epic. It says in the Bible, it says that God peeled back the waters and created dry land and vegetation. So amazing because yes, we have the atmosphere. Now we had to create the structure for how were things actually going to work, right? Because we have to breathe air. Animals have to breathe oxygen. And the only way that we can create oxygen is through photosynthesis, right? Or where they're converting carbon dioxide into oxygen, and plants are able to grow to produce to be able to produce more oxygen. It's incredible that God had a very specific structure in mind before he could create any animals or any humans for that matter. And it's so amazing that we just serve a God of structure and order. Like, because any of these days he couldn't create before the other day because it would mess everything up. And so many of us,
isn't that amazing?
We blitz through these simple steps where we, day 4 is order. Day 5 is movement and momentum. Most of us are trying to run through that because we're like, we want to be successful, but we haven't laid the foundation to have proper structure and order and momentum to be able to multiply on day 6, and then never forgetting the Sabbath, day 7. I kind of skipped quickly over those last ones, Jimmy. But that's the flow.
I'm glad you did because listen, I want people to buy the book. So I'm glad you didn't go into as much depth because I want them to get this book. What I love about it is God's creative order, right? And he is creating the environment for human flourishing. And I think that's the thing, right? Let's shift gears just a little bit about the culture in America right now. I mean, that's the environment, the atmosphere. I believe the culture in America is in real trouble. But there's hope. There's hope in this, right? There's a revival of sorts. There's people that are seeing what's actually happening. I mean, if you think about it, there is, and by the way, the culture matters. People always ask, well, why do you talk about culture? Because you could put the best talent in a bad culture and that will fail. But you can take mediocre talent and put them in a tremendous culture, and they will thrive.
Yes.
So we care about the culture in America because business can't thrive if it's decaying. Human beings can't thrive in that. So we care about it. And what we're seeing is, and you know this, an accelerated moral decay. We're calling good evil and evil good.
Yep.
We're seeing what I would consider, RYLEE, is a war on small businesses. I remember in the COVID days when all the small businesses were told they had to close, but we could keep the big boxes open, and none of that made any sense to anybody who was actually thinking about it.
Yeah.
We've seen 150,000 businesses go out because of it. We see this increased lawlessness. We see increased crime that's threatening the safety of our families. We see in our schools, we're seeing indoctrination of what I would consider confusion, mediocrity, and even in some cases promoting socialism, trying to end exactly what we're talking about, this capitalism, which ends up promoting human flourishing. We're seeing all this garbage, right?
Yep.
And I talk about this all the time, but how can we push back, right? Because as you said, we're agents of change. We're to be salt and light. We're ambassadors of the King and bringing his kingdom here. How do we push back against this cultural decay?
Yeah. Well, I've lived by a philosophy that we have zero to complain about what we tolerate in our life. We have no right to complain about what we tolerate in our life. And I found myself even during the 2020 debacle, finding myself complaining about things too, even complaining about other people, where it's like, don't you guys see this is what is happening? Like what you said, like closing small businesses, yet the big ones could be open. Like, don't you see? And then I'm sitting there complaining about it. And God convicted me so hard on this. He's like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And this is literally how the King's Council was formed. Ellie coming into my office. Ellie's my daughter. She would have been 8 at the time. And I remember watching all the junk that was going on, and just like so deflated, scrolling Instagram. I'm just like, this is unbelievable what's happening. And I remember looking down at her and just thinking, I cannot leave this world the way it is to my daughter. I can't do it. And but then I had that, remember our thoughts, our mindsets dictate everything. Immediately I had doubt put in, and this was the whisper in my ear, and it was, what can you do about it? You're just an entrepreneur. What can you do about it? As quickly I had that whisper, I had another one in my ear that said, if not you, then who? And that was the call to arms, where it's like, you know what? You're right. You're right. And that was just the stepping out of like, hey, does anybody else feel this way? And turns out a lot of people did, but it takes some cojones, right? For those to step out and actually stand for truth and fight back darkness, right? Because that's truthfully what we're actually going against here in America. There is good and there is evil. Whether they even are consciously knowing that they're working on the side of evil, that who knows, right? But that's what we're fighting against right now. And how we do this is by becoming intentional. And this is why I've become so intentional, or even just like infatuated with creating what we call the kingdom economy, right? And you hear it with there's great companies like Public Square that are now, fighting for what's right. And it's like, hey, vote with your dollar type concept. And we understand that. But how many people, and this is again, especially in the Christian community, we think that we're being good stewards with money just because we're looking for the cheapest, crappiest thing out there. It's like this woe is me victim mentality that, oh, I can save 3 cents at the Dollar General, so I'm going to go buy my whatever it is there, versus being intentional and sowing their dollars into other like-minded believers. And this is a crazy thing, Jimmy, just in a faith perspective. If we were able to actually, every Christian, self-professed Christian in America, if we actually did this, right, it's every problem on the planet would be solved. Literally every problem. If we actually tithed, if we actually, not even giving above and beyond the 10%, every problem in the world, hunger, starvation, water, everything would be solved, and there would still be about $483 billion left over. This is some of the stats that I lay out in a couple of my books, where it's just like, why aren't we? And again, it comes back to, because the Bible tells us, hey, you cannot serve both God and money, right? Or mammon would
Yeah.
be a more proper translation. It's like, well, what the crap is mammon? Mammon is the spirit of money.
Yeah.
It's the power that money has over most of us, right? And if I can't serve both of them, it's like, well, how do I know who I'm serving? Because I'm being a good steward. I'm saving on this money. I'm holding on to it tightly, God, right? Well, so did the one of the gentlemen in the parable of the talents, right? And he was called wicked and evil, and he was cast into the pit.
Yeah.
But those that actually multiplied, those that actually put their money to use, they served God and made money serve them. Those were the ones that were called a well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a little, I'll put you in charge of more. And this is the mindset we need to have of the church in America. That's how we can have kingdom impact, cultural influence. If we became intentional and we started to sow into each other's businesses, the dollar was able to circulate through the kingdom economy so that we could have influence. The problem is it's sickening to me, but the dollar from the Christian community does not even circulate one time hands. There is no loyalty amongst kingdom entrepreneurs or just Christians in general. And if we became intentional with this, that's how we can actually have true lasting impact generationally, right? Because I ain't doing this for me. I'm doing this for my creator, but also so that my daughter can still live in the incredible United States of America. It ain't looking pretty, but it begins and it starts with, I believe, entrepreneurs. And if we're not willing to step up to the plate and become intentional, I don't know who else will do it. I really don't, Jimmy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because your transition to this mindset and to this movement is very similar to mine. I actually got to see my daughter in a remote class. She was in high school at the time, and I saw what they were indoctrinating our kids with, and I just was appalled. I lost it. I'm like, wait a minute, what? I'm sending my daughter to this school, and this school is undermining her faith, undermining her victorious attitude, her work ethic. It was just a disaster. And I said, and God woke me up one morning and says, I'm going to change your career. I'm going to change your mission. I'm going to give you a vision for it, but you're going to do it. And I remember thinking, okay, here we go. I was terrified, knew nothing about this freedom movement. And in 2 years, I feel like I got a PhD in where we're at. And now we're fighting back with a kingdom mindset. So I've got a book coming out this spring called Kingdom Patriots. This idea of being in allegiance to God and Christ, and also being able to love your country and preserve the culture. So it's going to be fun.
Amazing.
We're so like-minded in this. And I think business is going to play a big role in preserving the culture, right? And there is going to be a cost for courage, a cost for boldly standing for truth and righteousness. There's no question it's coming. No. We see people losing their jobs because of it. We see people losing opportunities. But I believe that God is going to redeem all of that. And it doesn't change the fact that we need to be courageous. We need to be strong and courageous. It's a mandate. Yes. You talked a little bit about the parallel economy, and maybe we'll sit here for a minute. How important is it that we do business, like you said, with companies? I want you to you gave a stat when you were on that panel about how other cultures keep money within the culture, within the belief system, and how bad we're at it. I mean, I'm looking now at Bud Light, Target, Amazon, Starbucks, Harry's razors, as something as simple as razors. Yeah. People say, I remember when I first came to Christ and I decided, man, I really want my money to be aligned with my values and my heart and my faith. And I was very vigilant about, doing business with people with the same values. And I've returned to that now. I'm a big believer that, hey, my money should go to companies that support the things that I believe in, that don't actively work against that. How important is this? Is it that we put our money where our heart is, and that we do use each other's businesses who share our values?
Yeah, it's extremely important, Jimmy. I mean, if you even think of how this country was founded, this is founded on Christian beliefs, right? Yes. Like everything, that's what they were fighting for. And this is how you can see, I mean, I've seen this in the Minneapolis metro for multiple times now. This has happened where people of other faiths, I'll throw those stats out if that's all right, Jimmy. The Muslim community, those of the Islamic faith, $1, right? $1. So I have a dollar bill, exchanges hands 11 to 14 times within the Muslim community before it ever leaves, meaning maybe that dollar finally goes to a Christian, right? Or the Jewish community, 11 to 14 times. The Jewish community is 10 to 13 times, right? And this is why specifically those of Islamic faith, I've seen this in multiple pockets of the suburban Minneapolis, the metro there, where they can come into an environment or a city and completely overtake that city culturally because they financially are sewing into each other. They're building wealth. You don't even have to believe in like the supernatural. You just have to believe in math and how this works, right? It's like, no duh. They can come in and within 3 years, Jimmy, they've completely overtaken entire cities. We're talking 70, 80,000 people that have just taken over the cities. And now they're the ones dictating culture, changing laws, making things happen because they play the long game.
Yeah.
And most Christians we're so short-sighted on this. It's like, well, God's going to return, so I can just, do whatever. It's like, yeah, but we've also been called to occupy. We have been, that's scripture. Until he returns, we are to occupy. And we have to do that by being intentional with where we sow our dollars. In the Christian faith, I hate even verbalizing this. There's 11 to 14 in the Islamic faith, 10 to 13 in the Jewish faith. Christians are 0 to 1. 0 to 1.
So we don't even think about it. It's not even part of the thinking.
Not even that, and that's the problem. That is the problem. Where again, if we control our thoughts, our mindset, now we become intentional, right? It's like now we're looking, because even if right now I could say name 5 Christian companies out there, most people are going to be like, oh, Chick-fil-A, maybe they know Hobby Lobby. Well, I think In-N-Out has a scripture verse on some of their stuff. It's like we think of these things, but like, what about your local plumber? Right. What about the electrician that you hired? What about the people mowing your lawn? What about who takes your family photography? Like, who's creates your website design? Those people are as you mentioned, the backbone here, these small business owners that can completely come in and change culture, but it takes money. The number one enemy of every vision is lack of provision, right? And this is even just for the church as a whole. There's incredible vision for pastors, for ministries to take place, child sex trafficking, what Victor Marx is doing, I'm following him. It's like incredible vision. But at the end of the day, if they don't have money, they can't fulfill the vision. We can pray all day long. But when I read that parable of the Good Samaritan, it's like that dude had money. If all he had was good intentions, he couldn't have paid for them to be at the inn, couldn't have paid for him to be bandaged up and paid when he came back. It's like he had provision and he planned and prepared for it. And we need more epic kingdom entrepreneurs that are planning and preparing with provision to fulfill the God-given vision of America, right? We hope it's still there. It still can be, but again, it comes back to, what are you going to do? Are you going to become intentional and lock arms with these like-minded people to truly change culture?
I love that. I even did not really truly make the connection between the dollar and culture. Like you said, you move to a town, and if all of a sudden all the wealth comes into this community because they're using each other for business opportunities and all that money stays in the community, they're going to have incredible influence over time. And I was just thinking, and people say it's too hard. Oh, it's too hard to figure out these companies. It's too hard to figure out where to put your money. I'm like, wow, really, it's too hard. Why? Because you have another Netflix show to binge? Right. I mean, I can't even fathom this idea every time I send my dollar somewhere. I mean, I'm going so far as to try to limit my expenses on Amazon and buy from the company directly, knowing that they're a Christian company or a company that supports our pro-American, pro-family, pro-faith values. I'm going to that extent. Am I paying more? Yep, I'm paying a little bit more. I'm actually paying for shipping. But it's making a difference. And the other thing is this: we've proven with Bud Light, with Target, that they are using your dollars against you. So you're handing your money, quote unquote, to the enemy to then target your kids in school and to change the narrative in our media. Do I really want to be funding the opponent? I mean, would I hand my game plan over to the other team and say, well, this is what we're going to do? No,
Yes.
I certainly wouldn't resource them to do it. But as much as our money has to go into a provision, right, to that vision, it also has to stop going to those who are actively engaged against us. Don't you think?
Oh, 100%, Jimmy. I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's like scripture tells us we're called to sow on good soil. Yeah, and this is where in excellence we have to understand that it isn't about the cheapest thing and coupon clipping. Like, no, that's not. Yeah, we're not just willy nilly spending money. We are sowing it. If we understand that concept, that way I would happily buy and sow $5 extra into somebody versus spending. Right? Wow. Money can do two things. It can be controlled or spent. Right? It's like you can control it and you can sow it, or you're going to spend it and lose it. And if we understand that, that's how ultimately we serve God and make money serve us. Most of us, though, are serving money thinking that we're trying to serve God. And this is, again, where the enemy has infiltrated our minds in those that just think that it's about lack and that we don't have the ability to control and sow. Because last I read too, man, we serve a God that owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. And it's incredible abundance. And it's not like we don't sow to reap, but we do know that is a principle that actually takes place, right? And if you're sowing into crappy companies, you're also going to reap that as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. All right. So in our final minute, encourage our listeners, give them one or two things that you think, boy, if you were to start somewhere on this whole concept, where would you start? And then tell us how to get in touch with you. We're going to put all your information in the show notes so that people can get your books and connect with you personally.
Yeah, love it. So just ending on what we just talked about, man, back to, hey, I don't have any right to complain about what I tolerate. So it's like, well, what are we going to do about this? We've created a directory. It's called kingdomdirectory.com. And if any of you are business owners, you can literally go in there and register your business for free. Right there may be an option where it says if you'd like to pay $20 or something like that, but you don't have to. Like, just register for free, get a profile in there so we know where to find you. Think of it like the Angie's List, but for kingdom entrepreneurs.
Love that.
And that's where I know we're nationwide. We just launched this a few months ago, so we're growing here. But this is a directory that we provide, and we provide this to churches to lay out to provide it for a directory for their own congregation. Because unfortunately, just in their local church, most people don't know that there's business owners in the local church. And imagine how that could increase the tithe, how it could increase radical generosity if we sowed money into each other. So I would say just start to become intentional. And if you're a business owner, go sign up at kingdomdirectory.com. And we would love to be able to push this continued impact, or this cultural impact for the ultimate kingdom, right?
It's
God
awesome.
Rule and reign on this earth.
It's awesome. RYLEE, thanks so much, man. This has been a really, really influential hour. Super grateful for your commitment. Thanks for your friendship and your brotherhood. And we'll be keeping in touch and operating in the same direction to build the kingdom. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Jimmy. So great, man.